Ladies and gentlemen, Roster Watch Nation, welcome back to the epic Roster Watch podcast, brought to you by RosterWatch.com. My name is Alex Dunlap, joined by Cody Carpentier and the Trashman. As training camps continue to roll on, we have had Can't Miss Mitch now go to the Giants. He's headed up to the Patriots right now. Trashman and Cody about to deploy along with Byron to get you all the news and insight that you need. But as of right now, coming out of the radio shows this weekend, we have updates to the cheat sheets at rosterwatch.com, the magical, mystical, mythical three-step cheat sheets. You should not be drafting without them. They're available at rosterwatch.com along with all of our other tools. So make sure you get those. You cannot afford to draft without it. You follow the three simple rules at the top of the sheet of paper. An expert quality draft is always guaranteed. And as I've been running the update, so Cody, you got up version 1.1 of standard and half point PPR earlier today. I'm running tests to get version 3.3 of PPR updated. And man, now that we're pulling in more data from Sleeper on the PPR side, especially now that we're pulling in more data from CBS Sports, which just started really last night, we're seeing some ADP shifts with these guys. We're seeing things change, and that might be starting to present value, but it's also starting to make me feel a little bit kind of weird and goosey about some of these guys. The first one I wanted to talk about was Cody. You and I had texted about this before, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and Trashman's thoughts on this. With this latest round of PPR kind of consensus rankings, with when we bring in Yahoo, when we bring in ESPN, whenever we bring in the CBS Sports and Sleeper, we've seen now, Isaiah Pacheco is now going at before the 2-3 turn. He's at 21 overall, whereas Achane has now moved down to 26 overall. So we're now being able to start getting Achane sometimes, even later, kind of he's fallen to the 3-4 turn, whereas Pacheco is going ahead of him. And structurally on the cheat sheet, that was messing some things up. I still want Achane, but I'm wondering, how do you guys compare those two guys, Pacheco versus Achane?
I mean, Achane, from what we've already experienced with him, is probably more injury prone. He's just more boomer bust player. Pacheco, more of a consistent. You kind of know what you're going to get out of Pacheco on a week to week basis. Less competition in the backfield for sure. But I think the upside of Achane isn't there.
The upside for Achane is definitely. I mean, Achane.
The upside for Pacheco in comparison to Achane is not there.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I can't believe when I looked back and I saw that Achane, even in standard, man, he went for over 20 points in standard last year, 1/3 of the time. He went for over 25 in PPR, 25% of the time. But the fact of the matter is, his bust rate is super high at almost 42% of the time. So Trashman's exactly right for once. Achane is a boom bust player, right? I just wonder, like, how much Jalen Wright is going to bite into this, because with Pacheco, I can see why this is starting to pick up steam, man. The Chiefs, all we're seeing for training camp is these deep bombs to Xavier Worthy, and we know how things are. It's just so much better. Like Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, and eventually getting back Rashee Rice. That's so much better than MVS and Justin Watson and all the rest. I think that offense is going to be operating more smoothly and scoring position more often. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they're talking about him like, I mean, is he even going to make the team? And Derrick Prince is running ahead of him. It feels like his role is really, really safe as long as he's healthy, and a good offense is going to be playing in high-scoring games. But with Achane, it's really hard to get those 50 burgers out of your mind from last season.
I think I'm coming around on the Pacheco thing, as a whole, but the price tag for both players, I think, is the toughest thing for me, because I don't really love that end of round 2 capital for either player, when we know that neither are dominators in the receiving game. when you look at the rest of the league and the players that are going off in that range, whether it be Chris Olave, if you could go the tight end direction with Kelsey or Laporta, you take the first tight end off the board. Derrick Henry's another guy we like in that same area. Josh Jake. Like when you talk about these other guys that Derrick Henry, who we've seen and we project to be.
Henry's going much earlier now with the new stuff, though.
Much early is what 19.3. Pacheco's 22. Like it's right there. They're with each other in the same conversation, and that's why I'm saying like in that area you have all of these other players that have other aspects. Whether it's a receiver with mad PPR chops and Olave, who's down there in New Orleans with really not a ton there, that's going to take targets away. Whether it's tight end, whether it's a running back that in Josh Jacobs is going to be the full blown bell cow. Listen, I like Pacheco, and I think that the boom upside is obviously apparent. We saw it last year, weeks on end when he was healthy. Pacheco in that offense, I'm coming much more around on because they aren't spending anything in that backfield. They're not going to spend anything because they've learned from the Pacheco and the Clyde Edwards-Helaire dichotomy experiment that they don't need to spend capital in the running back positions. Now it's Derrick Prince. It's like, is Derrick Prince really going to be the guy that takes away those carries from Isaiah Pacheco?
He's going to look good in camp because he's such an athletic guy. But he's like, this was the same thing we heard last year about Derrick Prince.
But that's the whole thing. Is it's the same player as Pacheco. Pacheco had the same chops. Pacheco was the athlete in the backfield. This is my point. Is that it doesn't matter like who's in the backfield. This feels much more like it's Pacheco controlled, whereas Miami, you still have Achane, but you also have Wright, you also have Mostert, you also have, the whole offense just in how it's built is much more conducive to throwing the football than Kansas City, where last year they showed their ability to completely pivot to the run game. And I would say today, despite the videos you're seeing on Twitter of Worthy and Hollywood and XYZ, like, they're still going to run the football because Kelsey's aged. They want it. Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy have not exactly been the picture of health in their career. Like, they're going to want to run the football in Kansas City. So between these two guys, I lean Pacheco more so now than I did maybe 2 weeks ago. But I still, like I said, don't love clicking the button on either one at the end of round two.
Okay, but let's say I've done sim after sim after sim with this, and I think I get where you're saying. I think structurally I can make this work, but at what point do you say I'm comfortable foregoing? So Henry is not in this conversation, right? Is Etienne in this same conversation with Pacheco and DeVonta Achane for you?
Yeah,
those guys are in a separate tier.
I think Etienne's in that same area
with more, but not Henry.
What are you saying? Are you saying you'd rather have?
Yeah, no, what I'm saying is, all right, so you're saying that when you get to the end of the second round, beginning of third round, there's I'm envisioning you saying it's like, man, I might have a chance to get like a Chris Olave or a Drake London or a Mike Evans or something, you know what I'm saying? Like that. All right. So are we on the same page as
correct?
Okay.
Correct.
So would you forego one of those wide receivers to take Derrick Henry?
Depends if I started out with Hill or Bijan, if I'm drafting from the, 2
just
or 3.
In a vacuum. Let's just say in a vacuum.
I think I'd rather have Olave.
Okay, well that's fine. Okay, so but what you're basically saying though is that you'd rather have Olave. You're kind of you can pick and choose between like a Drake London or whatever the rest. Okay, so I think Derrick Henry does belong there. He can be in the mix there for that late second round. Can Travis Etienne, can he be in the mix as far as a decision?
100%. I would have. I mean, Etienne's ahead of Pacheco, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's right.
Yes. Well, we have Etienne ahead of Pacheco. Is Etienne ahead of Pacheco as far as the ADP nowadays? Like that Pacheco ADP really freaked me out earlier today. Yeah. So Etienne's Etienne's actually ahead of Derrick Henry now, which
as he should be.
I'm not.
Trashman,
sure.
you're a fan of Etienne, right?
Yeah,
like we talked about this like 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna take King Henry of Baltimore over Etienne, but I do like them both. I
would 100%. I mean, the ADP tells you it, but I would 100%. And I know this is maybe a stupid take because the ADP tells you this, but I would 100% rather have Etienne and or Henry vis-a-vis Isaiah Pacheco and or DeVonta Achane. Like structurally.
Vis-a-vis who in Etienne? I'm sorry. What'd you say?
The conversation started Isaiah Pacheco and Achane. Like their ADP is where they should be now.
Okay. All right. Okay. So Isaiah Pacheco and Achane, you feel like need to be more kind of like where we start getting to like after Mike Evans, more towards like Jalen Waddle and DeVonta Smith and Nabers and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we should be getting all, personal. I think as far as everything's lined up, and we've talked about these tiers at the receiver position, we should be getting as much of that DeVonta Smith, that Malik Nabers. I think Metcalf, Pittman can also be lumped in there, like as much of that tier at receiver as possible. And then I think that equates with missing out on the Pachecos and the Achanes, which is structurally where I want to be.
Does it equate with missing out on missing out on Josh Jacobs, Kamara?
Kamara, I think, is in a good conversation. And Josh Jacobs is one where like I definitely want to get like 15-20% of Jacobs at least.
Okay, so structurally, this is going to be pretty impossible to make work. I'm going to try to make it work, but it's like if you clear that area out, here's the other thing. So there are two other things I want to talk about. Then we can talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. But this is helping me through this. This update's hard today. So David Montgomery now is basically on all sites. He's ahead of James Conner in PPR. What do you guys think about that? Because I was actually surprised to look back and see last year that David Montgomery, even in PPR, I know it was buoyed by touchdowns, which are fairly unpredictable, but he was actually one of the safest PPR. Not super. It's like the opposite of Achane, right? Only 5% of games, just monsters, but he only busted for you in PPR, got you less than 10 points. I think like once all last season. It was like 11% of the time. Whereas you look at Conner, he goes big for those 25-point games, almost a little more than double what Montgomery did, but he busts 3 times as often.
So are busts included? I'm like, when you're saying bust, is that including games that he just misses out, right?
No, games he played. Yeah. So it's I wonder the reason why I think Montgomery still needs to stay ahead of Conner in PPR, but I'm not 100% convinced of this. But why don't you guys just let me know your thoughts? Okay, so let's say like if Trey Benson gets hurt, James Conner doesn't just go absolutely to the moon, right? If Jahmyr Gibbs gets hurt, David Montgomery goes to the moon. And David Montgomery is very safe even with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Can I enter one thing into this conversation? Yeah. And now I want honest truth on this because it's day one in pads. This is a report from today. For those thinking the RB2 battle was firmly between Michael Carter and Trey Benson, which I didn't know Michael Carter was in the conversation, Imari DiMercato has something to say. DiMercato has been a common occurrence subbing in for James Conner during first-team work. His pass protecting ability has been in display early. That's out of the Arizona camp. That's a 32 Beat Writers retweet. My question is, how do we even see this backfield breaking down? Because if it's of James Conner of past, right, it's 70+% opportunity share. It's a ton of work in the red zone. Like
bad defense, like a bunch of back and forth games, a lot of dome stuff, good environment. I mean,
do you think the Conner usage is going to be the same? Or
I think this is Conner's backfield until he gets hurt.
And I think when he gets hurt, I don't care what they say about Imari DiMercato. This is
I mean, I've been reading about the Michael Carter. Yeah. I mean, I had thought that Michael Carter was ahead of Benson to start training camp.
Is this why Benson? That's another guy who's I've noticed that Brian Thomas is falling in these simulations.
Yeah.
Benson's falling in these simulations. Kendre Miller, gosh, you can't get him low enough right now. And then the other one was Ty Chandler. It feels like he's falling in the sims. I'm not exactly sure why, but it feels like in these, I'm just like every time I'm getting Ty Chandler, I'm like, why do we get do I want this much Ty Chandler? I don't understand what it is about him. Why it is he's falling. whereas it's getting a little harder to get Jacobs. It's getting harder to get Zeke, dude.
Well, I don't want Zeke. I'm good on Zeke, dude. I felt good about it for a little bit until I read the reports about how the offensive line is performing, and I'm like, yeah, if this offensive line is worse than it was last year, which it was middle of the pack. It was like 14th in rush grade at PFF. Like, if it's worse and Tyler Guyton's not coming along to where they need him to be, and it's straight up just Zeke back there, and like Rico Dowdle hasn't pushed him at all. Like, this has all the makings
Royce Freeman as the number 2.
A nuke being dropped in Arlington, and this thing just exploding and being a mess and disgusting, and just a complete stay away.
Well, but still, I mean, my whole point with Zeke is that he's the lead back on a team that's going to run a lot of plays, and it's a good offense, and he's like going like
that's a top 5 offense.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd rather have him over a committee back.
It's a top 5 offense with a good if it has a good offensive line, if it has a happy CeeDee Lamb, and who, like, 3 years ago was a top 5 projected offense, right? When it had Gallup, when it had Lamb, when it had all these other pieces that are now gone, and when Pollard was healthy, and like now I'm kind of scared of this Dallas offense. Like, I've been pretty positive about Dallas, but I'm getting much more worried when you hear that, like I said, the offensive line is doing worse than it was last year, when they actually put resources in Cooper Beebe and Tyler Guyton into it, and they paid the right tackle, and it's work. And now you have obviously an aged Zeke. Like, how can you, I don't know, like, Chase Brown's going off 18 picks later. Chase Brown's going off 18 picks later. Gus Edwards is right there next to him. Devin Singletary, we heard from Can't Miss Mitch yesterday, he's 3 spots earlier than Zeke. Devin Singletary looks good. Like, I kind of feel better about Devin Singletary than I do about Zeke, and that sounds terrible. I don't want any part of either one.
You got the trash man rubbing off on you.
I don't want any part. I just said I didn't say shit about. I don't want any part of either one of them. I'm just saying, like, that's the conversation we're having, and we should be having. Is Zeke against Singletary in a realistic conversation? Not, Zeke is. I don't think he's an insane value right now, because I'm worried.
I'm not sure. I'm saying I think he's an insane value. I think he's a fine running back 4 in season-long managed leagues, and if you can draft him as such, I don't mind it. As far as especially, he's got Rico Dowdle and Tiny Deuce
He's going to be getting the bulk of carries on a team. And
what's going to happen? He's going to be there. 250 touches. What's going to happen to an old Zeke with 250 touches? He's not going to make it to 250.
He's going to score touchdowns. He's probably
going to score, and he's probably going to catch balls like he did in New England last year when we were all playing him in DFS all the time. They don't have anybody else to throw to.
You are going to get so cooked.
I'm not gonna. No, I'm not saying. I'm not going all in on Zeke. I'm saying he's a fine RB4.
Yeah, like, where are we drafting Zeke right now? Anyways, it's not like you're having to.
It's like he's falling to 9th to 10. Like we're talking about a RB4. One other thing is the DeVonta Smith, Malik Nabers. I've always said these 2 guys might flip. When you bring in all the ADPs, they used to be back-to-back as far as wide receivers, DeVonta Smith and Malik Nabers. Now they're just back-to-back as players. People are having to make that decision in every draft between DeVonta Smith and Malik Nabers. DeVonta Smith is technically ahead, but it's by a, it's just by a hair. You guys have a take here?
In the first iteration of the standard half cheat sheet, I had Smith ahead. 1.0, I put Nabers ahead. 1.1, I put Smith ahead. I'm working on 1.2 already. I put Nabers back ahead. I flipped both of these guys every single time. I'm getting a fair share of both.
How are we going to put an untested rookie with a garbage quarterback on an arguably garbage offense ahead of DeVonta Smith right now?
Oh my! I mean, okay, I get that.
Well, it's fair enough. I mean,
strategically, from a roster building standpoint, we're getting Smith every single time, anyways. Not every single time, 80%, like literally 70-80% of the time. The thing is you're going to start having to, and you are having to take Nabers first and you will still get Smith. But if you take Smith, you won't get Nabers.
I don't think that's always true. At least not in PPR. That's not always
in half
true.
standard. More often than not, if you take Nabers first, Smith it depends, of course, where you're drafting at, but Smith will fall to you. In the other aspect, Smith, if you take Smith first, Nabers will never fall to you.
No, yes, he will. I've seen both of those phenomena happen.
Okay, maybe in PPR, but not in half and standard. It's not working like that. I'm just telling you how the drafts are unfolding when I'm doing the sims. Like, I did it for 3 hours this morning, and like I said, I switched these guys back and forth because I'm trying to, like you said, like fit the puzzle pieces in, and it's tough because I really want both these dudes. We've talked about this tier of receivers for the last month, and it's like they're still sitting there and they're still sick value. They're both disgusting. I want them both.
Right? Yeah, I want both of them. I'm starting to wonder if just with the way the cheat sheet works, and people know it's made of magic, but you can tell it's just a whole bunch of man hours go into this, which is testing it and understanding how the sims work. And I want to get both. I'm just wondering if this Nabers stuff, I wonder if he's going to flip him, because it just seems like what the trends have been. I certainly agree, Cody. You could take Nabers first and you can get DeVonta Smith, but you can take DeVonta Smith and still get Nabers. I'm worried that's going to change. Like, I'm worried that maybe what you're seeing in the 0.5 PPR sims is what I'm about to start seeing that I'm kind of yet to see in PPR. It feels to me like those two are interchangeable. With that being said, I feel like we need to break a tie. Trashman says, no way, Nabers over DeVonta Smith. You say you're just like me. You're waffling on it, but you kind of want to make it Nabers. The reason I'm scared of Nabers is because Mitch just got back from there. He says that offensive line looks terrible.
Yeah,
that offense is terrible.
The offense is going to be terrible, but it's going to funnel through one player. Like Mitch literally said, like it's Wandale, it's Hyatt, sometimes Slayton, and it's Nabers, and Nabers is so clearly the number one player, number one target, number one everything there.
I mean, even if we're just thinking about like scoring profile for either of those players, like DeVonta Smith, we at least get. I mean, like it's already a good offense, you know. He's already got the errant touchdown there anyway, and then you add the big playability. Nabers, we're relying on big playability for him to score touchdowns. That's not going to be an offense that's scoring a lot of touchdowns otherwise.
It doesn't matter, because we already saw Jamar Chase get drafted ahead of DeVonta Smith in the NFL draft. You're getting a second opportunity here to draft Malik Nabers ahead of DeVonta Smith, and you're going to do it because DeVonta Smith is competing with A.J. Brown. He's got Saquon Barkley in this backfield. He's got Dallas Goedert. He's got speed all around him. And there's only one player in New York that even has the opportunity to go north of 100 targets. And we're not going to pass up, and we cannot afford to pass up on a guy that's going to go north of 140 targets with the upside of going nuclear, going for north of 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, even in a terrible offense. And that player's name is Malik Nabers. You just can't afford to skip out on him. So we got to take him over DeVonta Smith, just like Jamar Chase went over DeVonta Smith.